Okay, we're going to get into a container barn update and some of the challenges of recording these videos and how it impacts what you're going to see. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. As you guys know, this pad was put out in a series of videos, and there's more content in the training program, but in a sense, this is a Earthworks with an 6 to 8 inch gravel pad that we put these storage containers on, and we're going to build a barn over top of it. But this is the challenge I want to talk to you about. We're moving around some buildings and getting another project put together, and I need a quick place to store stuff. And now I'm not ashamed of the mess this is becoming, but there's a couple key things you need to know about using containers for storage that's important before you build the top roof sections. And it's a common problem that especially guys run into when it comes to materials. Now, you can see I collect a bunch of materials. Like, for example, if you find a good quality pallet, you know, a pallet can last you 5 or 10 years. You find a good quality pallet, you need to collect it. Oh, and then by the way, there's some pipes. Look at how useful those pipes are gonna be. And this might be genetic, but there's useful materials here. Now, we're quickly cleaning out a couple buildings so that they can be moved for the home site, or what we call it, the base camp site up top there, where we're going to build the off-grid cabins. And we're doing classes around the off-grid cabins, and we're doing a video program about the off-grid cabins. And so there's probably 5 or 6 projects going at the same time. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you can relate. We got all these plates spinning. But if these materials stay out here in the rain and snow and other seasonal weather, they will go bad. They will not be available. For example, this fiberglass will degrade in the sun. So what we got to do is, number one, we got to wrap up projects as we go so that we have the most important projects spinning on plates, and then those projects are completing. So those pieces of wood that are going to be used to divide the stripped poles, which are going to then become the shower house and the bathroom unit, they can't just be out here in the rain. Now, it's better that they're on the gravel than being just out there in the mulch and stuff. But what we're going to do as a means of organization is we're going to cluster up items. Now, again, if you cluster up like items together, you're more likely to be able to move the items or to recall the items when necessary. So, for example, we've got round poles there for fencing. We've got decking boards. We've got the fiberglass rods. And we're going to get into that biggest problem with the containers. We'll talk about that shortly. We've got materials. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you remember, this is the retort kiln that we've used before to make biochar. But we've got out here fencing materials. Now, I also know that there's fencing materials up top there with the tote. There's also additional decking materials. So we need to put like things together near where they're going to be used. And ideally, the best place to store supplies is in a finished project. Okay? So you can have piles of materials here and there, but the materials are going to break down over time and be less and less valuable the longer it sits in storage. So see these kind of vegetable poles and stuff like that. The longer they sit in storage, the less valuable they're going to be. So the best place to put fence and garden materials is in a garden actually growing food and produce. So when we talk about high utility value from our land, we want the land to produce a multiple of the inputs, but overall be in a sustainable state so that it continues to improve in quality. So all these piles of rocks everywhere, it takes energy to move those rocks someplace else. But if that pile of rock is going to be there, it needs to be a nice, neat little pile, because you can see the materials behind there that could be cut up for firewood. And so as we're cleaning things up, we have a written plan. So for example, there were some cattle panels right here. I put them out here where the corral is going to be. And then you can see in the background, the trailer has additional panels. When those come off, they're going to go where the corral is. We have designated roads and access points that are going to stay clear at all times. And then we have our materials near where they're going to be used. And then again, repeat after me, all you guys out there, all you guys with messy garages, all you guys with piles of junk that you know you're going to use one day. And I know from personal experience that I've had a bucket of screws in my garage for years, and I threw it away. And no sooner did I throw that damn thing away did the gods align the universe to need that bucket of screws. And so I ended up having to go out and buy decking screws from Lowe's, which cost me $45. So I know the thing. I know the feeling. I know the frustration. I'm sharing it with you, but if those decking screws were in use immediately, and this is why when your buddy comes over, if you've got a little extra materials in a pile, you just give it to your friend. You just barter it. You exchange it. But again, the key here is we're going to move materials where they need to be. So we've got our water filtration systems right there. Those are going to get moved as soon as we get the buildings up top to where we're going to have the aquaculture system. So remember the backyard aquaculture program that I had set up in urban space and that the city told me I had to take down? Well, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to set it up over here, and we're going to do that program again. So rather than getting and building these barrels again, I put them someplace where they're going to be out of the weather, but they're going to move immediately to the staging area where the project is going to happen. There's a gate there. That gate is going to move too. Again, it's out of the way. It's not causing a bunch of problems, but these containers, notice how tall they are. I'm not even going to show you inside this container. And by the way, do not show people inside your containers because you lock stuff up out of sight for a reason. You can fit a whole car in one of these containers, but notice how tall it is. Without shelves, you're going to end up filling the bottom of the container up first. So stage the stuff outside that can be in the weather, get your shelving up, and then get stuff up off the ground. What kind of stuff do we put in containers? We put building materials in the containers. We put things of higher value in the containers. We put household goods in the containers. Outside the container, you can have your chalking blocks on the ground, and you can have a spare bucket. And by the way, I'm going to try to go completely no plastic here because a lot of these buckets will rot over time, and they just start falling apart, and I think there's better solutions out there. Again, your hoses need to be brought up. Now, if we're stacking stuff outside, what does that create? Well, it actually creates habitat for mice and rodents. So we want to even outside have vertical stacking and, when possible, things under cover. It's okay to have materials. By the way, these two pipes here, these two pipes have to go out back because I have like 15 of them out back in a stack. Why have part here and part back there? These are just in the way. So the next video you see, those won't be on the ground. But are you following with what I'm saying here? I know a lot of folks will end up with a bunch of extra junk everywhere. At least that's what people are telling you. Why do you got this junk everywhere? But when there's supply chain disruptions, when there's challenges, when you're building out a project, you will have building materials on site that need to be placed someplace where they can be easily accessed, because the very best place for these materials is implemented on the property. Those drain pipes are going to be used as swivel drains for earthwork systems. Until I have the earthwork systems up and going, these pipes need to be out in the woods somewhere in the shade, or they're not going to decompose with the sun on them. And then sooner than later in the ground in some of the trails. So there's a couple places on the trails where we have low areas I'd like to build up, which gives us an opportunity for finger ponds. So how do we manage on the back end? Because I keep talking about these projects. I've got all these videos out here. Even if you're not doing the videos, which I don't necessarily recommend, it's not as beneficial as you might think, but you want to have some kind of project list. And we talk about this in my outcome management program as part of my consulting work that I do. And basically, you're going to have a project list somewhere. That project list is where you start your work focusing on the most important project. And any new project goes on the list and gets evaluated before you get going. Like, I've had this rabbit cage that I found for years now. I don't have any rabbits. I have access to rabbits. I have access to rabbit meat. And this cage actually needs to be repaired. There's a couple places it needs to be repaired. And so what's the best thing to do with this? If I'm not going to have rabbits anytime soon, I may turn this into something else. So I may use it as a holding cage. I'm probably going to end up with quail pretty soon, or would have some other use for it. So again, we got to put it someplace where I can find it so I don't buy a second one. I'm really hitting on a lot of hot points for some folks. Be sure to like and share your comment below. But I don't want to go buy another cage because the cage is going to cost quite a bit of money to replace. And so what are we looking for here? We're looking for a way to store materials where they're out of the way, where everything still looks nice and neat, where you can pull the materials you need in a timely fashion, and then ultimately implement to finish projects. The more projects you can finish, the more free time you have to enjoy. So I know for some people this doesn't seem too messy, but it's really a staging for the buildings that we're clearing out. But it could essentially get worse because everything's spread out flat on the ground. It's between two spaces. I can't park here. We're not using the vertical space in the containers. And then when it comes to the barn, these containers need to be leveled. They're already leveled, but they need to be made parallel, anchored to the ground, or leveled in a way that we can then build the building over top of it. So if there's a bunch of junk stacked up in the middle and a bunch of junk leaning up against the side of it, then that cannot be done. So again, what you'll see over the next couple of weeks is a lot of this stuff's going to come out and get used. And so, for example, there's a bunch of nursery plants and we got seeds and stuff we're going to get started up. And then we'll be functioning with projects, stations. So the stations are the physical places the implementation of the project is going to go, and then written plans. If you'd like to do these things, I'm going to start a program about, and we already cover it in the mastermind. We already cover it in the coaching programs that I have. But we're going to start talking about farm management and how to convert these surplus resources into some useful value, how to keep the farm nice and neat and focused on implementation, because a lot of times collected materials, it's time wasted. It's a form of procrastination. And then, of course, how to use how to make these projects more beneficial to you as you create some kind of production, as you have high utility value of land, as you start developing your small farm or homestead. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I want to see your questions below. I want to see the questions you have about operating a farm, about managing the day-to-day activities and projects that are on the farm, about staffing your farm, about having a profit at the end of the year that's beyond a full freezer, because subsistence is good, but you want to be able to pay for the tools and equipment and all the things that you need to farm, and ultimately how to handle general resource management. Put your comments and questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, where we talk about how to start your small farm or homestead in a highly valuable and profitable way so that you can have prosperity, so that you can have personal freedom, so that you can have choice. And I'm going to get this truck emptied. There's not a lot in there. It's not a lot in the truck, but I got to go around the corner and get some implements and drag them over here for our temporary holding space. And again, I do a lot of these videos for accountability, but put them in the temporary holding space so that we can get some buildings that are going to get delivered tomorrow. Man, if you thought starting a homestead was a way to relax in retirement or to run a farm, and you're just going to, even a gentleman's farm, and you're just going to live in your little cottage, you got a rude awakening because there's a lot of work to do, a lot of schedules, a lot of things that keep you going, but it's so rewarding. It is so valuable to have the freedom to spend 20 minutes doing a video in the middle of a day during the week on my own schedule, knowing that I'll have a full belly, safe, secure environment, and ultimately a prosperous homestead. Visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org, where we have a number of resources we'll introduce you to. And don't be getting any ideas about my goods that are laying out here. Don't you be thinking about you're going to get my jumble of wire. Anyway, ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Looking forward to hearing from you. And thank you so much for the ones that have asked questions already. I've had some great conversations with people at all different levels of getting their homestead going. And I love to share some of the success stories that they've had from watching the videos. Be sure to like and subscribe. There'll be links in the comments below or links in the description below that'll help you get started. I'll see you in the next one.